Today we're going to be doing an engine swap on my Coleman CT200U. This is my Tillitson 212 engine that was originally on this motor, but I had a little mishap with it and it kind of put a hamper on things and I had to take it off. This is the exhaust port on the cylinder head right here, and I had a stud break off inside of here, or when I was tightening the exhaust nut down. What I think caused that was a combination of a really long header pipe that put a lot of leverage in it, and the fact that it was vibrating around constantly. So I had to take it to a shop, and I had the bolts extracted for about $40. So I need to pick up some studs. But other than that, this motor is ready to be put back on this mini bike. This guy right here is a Baja 196 motor on my Coleman, which is kind of funny. This motor doesn't have charging coils or nothing. It was originally a spare motor for the Bajas, so again, no charging coils or nothing. So it's fairly simple wiring wise. But as you can see on this Tillitson, there's a lot more wires here. It's nothing complicated or nothing, but it's just something that's going to add a little bit more time to the process. And we have a whole array of tools we're going to be using today. Some heat shrink right there, soldering gun, and a bunch of other basic bullshit. Alright, so let's begin taking this motor off. Now I'm going to take off all the motor mount bolts, get the motor loose, and then I can do a few more quick things and then pull the whole motor off. Okay, now the only thing I need to do now is take a razor blade and cut the shrink wrap off this connection for the kill switch, and then undo the ground on the recoil housing, and it's ready. Alright, now we got everything disconnected, we can pull the motor from the unit. Alright, now I need to get my motor propped up on these 1-inch risers right here, and then bolt the Tillitson down, and then get started on getting that motor on. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start installing the jack shaft plate. This is a 1/2 inch. We got my Tillitson 1/4-inch drive torque wrench, and we're going to be torquing this down to 204 inch-pounds, which is 17 foot-pounds. Right now I'm on a torque converter built, so I'll have to take one off one of my other machines for this one. Welcome back everyone, today's a new day and we are continuing the engine swap with my Coleman mini bike. I had to take this washer off the crank bolt off another motor so I could use it on this motor because I ran out of washers. Well, I guess I'm going to pull the driven pulley back off it, that way I can put the chain on, make it a lot easier and get the dirty part out of the way before I start doing anything else. And of course, when I'm trying to work and just dump fucking coffee everywhere. Fuck! Well, that's kind of neat to watch. Okay. Back to square one. Okay, so I need to get a longer crank bolt because this one is nowhere near long enough to thread in with a washer on it. And I kind of need the washer. Okay, so I accidentally hit stop on the video, but I got the chain back on and I got the torque converter all set up and ready to put a belt on. I guess now I'm going to turn the bike around and I guess I'm going to start working on the wiring. I'm going to have to resolder this connection and I think one more, and then that's the only thing I got to solder, and the rest of it's just kind of plug and play and reroute the cables and everything. This wire right here is going to the battery. This is the wire that runs from the switch. This is the connector from the light. This black wire we got running here, this is going to be the ground. And then we have the hot wire. I don't have any red wire, so this is also the hot wire for the rear tail lights, and this is one's for the front headlight. This is a kill switch right here. We got the hot, and then this is the ground. This is the wire that's going to, that's coming from the motor for the kill switch. Then of course we got the battery terminals right here. And this black wire is going to be the ground from the back of the motor run to the battery. Pretty simple wire, nothing real fancy about it. Most of it's just plug and play stuff. I will be adding heat shrink to this brown wire right here. That is a charging coil wire, so I would definitely want to put some heat shrink on that. The way that wire is bending is not good. It's probably going to snap over time, so better to fix it now than later. This is the battery I'm running. Got it off Go Power Sports. I believe it was around 30 or 40 bucks. It's plenty enough for the electric start and running the lights and stuff. And then right there is my battery tray. It's right behind the motor. One thing I forgot to install when putting my motor mount in was my battery holding bracket. I don't know where that is. Gotta find it before I start putting the battery down. This is it right here. It's pretty crude. This end goes right under the motor mount bolts, and then it's going to go over to the top like that, and then wrap around the battery, and that holds it in and stops it from falling out. I'm going to be running all my wires that are going to the battery on this frame rail right here. Zip tie them on to clean it up, of course. A good tip is when you start routing your wires is you're going to want to put a few zip ties on them, but keep them loose. That way, if you need to change something or add another wire, you don't gotta waste zip ties. Alright, so before I continue routing wires, I'm going to need to solder these two together. First, I'm going to get my wire strippers and then strip the ends, and then twist them together, and then get them ready for soldering. Before you twist them together and solder them, it's a good idea to add a piece of heat shrink. That way you can better protect your connection rather than using something like electrical tape that's just going to unravel over time, and it's going to get damaged pretty easy by the elements. So use heat shrink. Got a Weller soldering gun, some solder, and 2 different types of flux. Okay, for the people who don't know, flux is actually pretty important. It's kind of like an acid that when you apply it to the end of the soldering gun, it cleans the tip, but also when you apply it to the wires, it's gonna clean your wires, and it's gonna allow your solder to stick to it much easier than if you didn't use the flux. Okay, I got some flux at the end of the zip tie, and now I'm going to apply it to the wires. That is way more flux than that is actually needed, but it's cold out, so the flux just kind of clumps together, so that's what I got. Another good tip is when you're soldering connections, heat the gun up and then apply solder to the tip of the gun, and then let it cool, and then apply it. It makes it a lot easier, so that way you don't need to hold the solder and the gun at the same time. Unfortunately, I only have a phone to record, so you won't be able to see me solder, but, you know, that's how it be sometimes. And that's the solder that I just applied to the tip of the gun. That was the first pass. I'm definitely not no soldering expert or nothing like that, but I'm able to do it okay. Okay, and after taking about 2 or 3 different passes, applying solder to the tip each time, this is what we got. We got one little spot there on the side that I'm going to add solder to so it doesn't poke through the heat shrink, but other than that, it's mint. Okay, and that's what we got. You're going to want your connection to cool a little bit so your heat shrink doesn't immediately shrink when you try to put it over it. Sometimes when you solder it, it's hard to get the shrink wrap over it, so you just kind of get it over the end of the solder and then keep twisting it around it, and then eventually it'll slide over it. And we got one more piece of heat shrink we're going to slide over it just for the extra protection. Okay, so I can't get the heat shrink all the way over it, so this is going to have to be good enough. Now I can plug this in and start zip tying and routing wires again. Now I'm going to route these wires along with these ones, and this is the hot and ground for the lights. Even though they're both black, the one right there is hot. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten down these zip ties, and then I'm going to add a few zip ties up here, and once I get these all zip tied down, I'm going to start taking care of this wiring in here. I like to keep all my wires on top of each other and not wrapped around each other, because when it comes time to trace down a problem in a circuit somewhere, this is going to make it a lot easier as well. I'm considering buying a little strip of underglow to put under my seat. I think that would look really cool at nighttime with the tail lights and the headlights and like a red or like purple strip underneath it. I think that would be badass. Mint. Now we're going to start hooking up the kill switch. That's the ground for the kill switch wire. Okay, I got the brown wire taken care of, and I also zip tied some of the wires together to clean the look up a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer. There's a decent amount of wires, but it looks a lot better when they're all zip tied down and done nicely. Before I put my battery in, I'm going to need to loosen that nut and the motor mount bolt closest to me so I can put my bracket in there to hold my battery in. And this is how the bracket goes on there, like this. So when I put the battery in there, I can just flop this over the top of it, and I'm good to go. Okay, so I just ran into a little problem. The way that I have my wires running underneath the foot peg bar right there is making the wires a little bit shorter, so these grounds will not reach. So I'm going to have to cut these zip ties and reroute these over the foot peg bar instead of underneath it. Now I gotta pull the battery back out and loosen those connections so I can actually move the wires. That's how I should have done it. Okay, well I fixed the wiring routing problems, but this ground wire is just simply not long enough, so I'm going to have to take this end off, solder a length of wire in, and then put a ground terminal at the end of it. Okay, I got it soldered. I had to resolder it because the solder bead was too big to get heat shrink over, so I had to redo it. Okay guys, I got the battery in, I got the wires and everything all hooked up. I just need to put the bracket in to hold the battery and everything's done. I skipped a few things here and there, especially toward the end of the video just because it's getting long. So if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.